my friends, and welcome back to my channel. I have been on about a 6-week hiatus from reading. If you want to know kind of why I stopped reading for that long, link to the video where I address it right there. If you want a TLDR, life got a little crazy. So I would say I stopped reading 80% because I just did not have time for it because, life happens. And about 20% of it, honestly, I would attribute to a reading slump. So for this vlog, I am going to be easing back into reading. Now, typically, in order to get out of a reading slump, I will do one of three things. I will either pick up an old favorite book, I will pick up a new book from a favorite author, or I will just listen to an audiobook. Either I've, heard it before or it's new to me, but either way, I find that having something to listen to while my hands are free to do other things kind of helps me stay engaged, in the story and in what I'm doing. It's being duly engaged really helps for some reason. So this is a mood reading week for me, but I am sure you guys already know what I am reading this week, considering I will probably put the covers in the thumbnail. But without further ado, I am going to get into my first book of the week, even though I have no idea what it is. All right, so I have been listening to Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling on audiobook for the last couple hours. And I am just over halfway, so I figured now's probably a good time for a halfway update. I am listening to it on Audible, so unfortunately I don't have a physical copy to hold and talk to you about it, but I'll put the cover right up there. This was an indie published book that has since become traditionally published, and they did rework it. So I'm listening to the trad published edition at this point because I got it on Audible, and tis what tis. But I looked into getting an indie copy of the book because I wanted to compare side by side. Oh my god, people are selling them for a mint. So Audible is going to do, and so far I'm genuinely enjoying it. I'm happy. I kind of just picked it out of the blue. I just kind of scrolled through the library that's available to me and was oh, this looks like it could work. And it is working. So like I said, this book has been on the internet for a hot minute, but on the off chance that you are not, up to date on it, this book follows Elwyn when she's a young adult in her 20s. And prior to the events of this book, when she was born for her christening, her birthday celebration, however you want to put it, a rival kingdom brought 4 dragon eggs to her, which surprisingly ended up hatching. And additionally, there was a prophecy made at the time saying that she would either be her kingdom's salvation or her kingdom's ruin. And, that people don't put too much shock into it initially, but when she's, I think, 4, one of her dragons bites her father defending her because her father is rather abusive, and he raises a hand to her, and one of the dragons bites. And in retaliation, her father locks her and the dragons up, and then she spends the next 5-10 years being tortured, just, to try and break the bond with the dragons and all this stuff. And at some point, her maternal uncle has enough and breaks her out. But he kind of has no desire for her to eventually reclaim her throne and reclaim her dragons. He kind of holds the dragons responsible for her mother, the queen's death. And so she has kind of since made a life for herself, founded a small kingdom. He's been her advisor, but he's kind of been encouraging her to just focus on her new life and forget the old. However, because she's soul bonded to these dragons, she really struggles to accept the fact that, they're out of her reach. And so the story kind of starts with a general from a third kingdom identifying her and striking a deal with her. He will help her get her dragons back if she and her dragons will then back him and his kingdom in a war against her birth kingdom. So I am just this is so much fun. I am kind of enjoying the dynamics between all the characters, Kanan, the MMC, and the general that has uncovered her identity, has kind of built his own found family, and he seems to have significant power. He overrules his king several times and forces through some treaties, and it's just, he seems to be a little overpowered politically. And I enjoy like the friends that he's kind of built into his own little found family, and they've kind of like accepted Eowyn and her best friend, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. There are a couple things that like, well, honestly, the only thing that's really put me off has been like the soul like spicier scene. Like they get pretty hot and heavy making out. And I don't know if it's just because it's audiobook form and I'm like, I don't need this read to me or what, but like that put me off the book a little bit, which is surprising to me because I'm not, I'm not opposed to spice. I enjoy a little bit of spice in my book. So I was kind of surprised that that one was like, So maybe I like Kanan and Eowyn separately and not like as a couple. He's kind of referred to as a demon general, so he's taken to calling her an angel, which is like cute but also gross. So I'm just having fun, and they are plotting. I do think that they both have quite like an independent streak, and so they like plot separately and then they plot together, but they like leave their friends out of it. So I'm waiting for the fact that they're going to probably have to bring in everybody in order to make this work. So, like I said, I'm about 60% of the way through it, and I am having so much fun with this potential heist. And I'm loving the fact that she's like standing on business and like standing on her own 2 feet. Like she's making a point that, she wants to like make sure that the kingdom she founded is doing well and her people are fed, but she also is determined to reclaim her birthright and to make her father pay for what he has done to her and hers. So I will check back in with you when I am done, but I have to say, like I said, this is fun. I can see why everybody has like loved this book. So I have officially finished Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling, which is book 1 of me diving back into reading after my hiatus. And I watched back my last clip, like my halfway check-in clip, and I realized that like I had said in my like life updates video that I had gotten Invisalign, but like I hadn't really noticed a lisp. Well, now that I'm also wearing the rubber bands, the lisp has come in. So if there is any point in the future where I say something and, it's like, my T's and my H's and my C's and my S's and whatever, like sound a little weird, it's because I can't form the words. So forgive me. This is a new era of Emily can't speak properly. I mean, English is difficult regardless, but apparently, it's going to be extra difficult moving forward for me. But this book, I think I'm going to give it like a 4-star rating. I enjoyed it. I did not love like the relationship between our FMC and our MMC, which you kind of have to enjoy that in a like romantic to give it a 5-star, which is why I'm not giving it 5 stars. Is like I initially like very much enjoyed their banter, but as like we got deeper into the book, I started finding like them just kind of grating, to be honest. And I also, like I said, wasn't really loving the spice scenes, which don't really kick in until like the latter half of the book. But I don't know. I can't tell if it was like the audiobook being like disengaging and if I had been more engaged, if I had like read it on the page or what, but it just wasn't working for me. So, it's just the kind of the relationship kind of killed it for me, which to be honest, I think the relationship is like a good 60% of the book. So, it's kind of a bummer, but like, I really, really loved like the plot and like the political machinations and like the found family, like I said in the halfway check-in. So it's kind of like, I'm a little torn. So I'm going to give it a 4-star, a tentative 4-star. And I will say I enjoyed it enough that I went immediately into Wrath of the Dragon, which is the second book in the duology. However, I ran out of audiobook hours on Spotify. So we will not be talking about that book very much in this video because my audiobook hours won't renew until after this video is posted. So, but Fear the Flames, I will say that one of the things I noticed, I didn't like put 2 and 2 together until I think the last like 25%, which maybe is just a, duh moment. And everybody else picked on that way before me, but Eowyn's storyline reminds me quite a bit of Daenerys, like her being gifted 5 dragon eggs that were thought to, the gods are gone, the magic, is somewhat banned in certain kingdoms, yada yada. The eggs are thought to not be hatchable, and then all of a sudden they hatch for her because she's the right person. So I kind of I felt like I never watched Game of Thrones, so maybe it's why it took me so long to catch on. But it's been around long enough and it's been on YouTube enough that you just kind of know what happened to Game of Thrones, even if you've never watched it. And I just feel like some parts of her story arc reminds me of Daenerys. And I will say the other thing is, I feel like, and this is more, I think, because I've now gotten 25% of the way into Wrath of the Dragons, but we start getting more hints at her bond with the dragons and her bond with Kaden might be God and goddess blessed. And there wasn't really a significant amount of emphasis put on the gods and magic in the first book. Not really. I mean, it was kind of about the heist and getting her dragons back. And so I feel that, it's kind of odd to now be into Wrath of the Dragons and we're starting to get hints that everybody's ties are more magical and than they realize. And, Elwyn and Kaden are deeply affronted by the idea that their, relationship may or may not be influenced by a greater power, which I find kind of annoying. You don't have to believe in it, but you don't have to. Enough extraordinary stuff has happened in your life that maybe you should give it a little bit of credence. I don't know. So I will probably, like I said, finish Wrath of the Dragons when my audiobook hours roll back over. But until then, I'm a little bit stuck. So where am I going from here is the question. And that answer is Bookshops and Bone Dust. I really, 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 really loved Legends and Lattes, which I didn't think I would because I didn't think I was a cozy fantasy girl. But I loved it. And so I have, this book from him, and then he's releasing Brigands and Bread Knives soon, or it's already out. I can't remember. But either way, I'm very excited for that book as well. I'm going to wait to purchase it, though, until it comes out in this kind of edition, because I actually really, really like these covers. But I'm going to pick this book up because we're just taking a left because I've been denied finishing Wrath of the Dragon. So I'm going to be going into this book, and I'm going to probably have a great time. So I will check in with you when I am about halfway through this book. It is time for the halfway check-in for Bookshops and Bone Dust. I have to say, I did not realize that this was also about Viv. So I kind of picked Bookshops and Bone Dust and Legends and Lattes with very minimal information on them. I kind of picked them up because they were so popular. So I didn't really know all that all I was getting into. I especially didn't really, obviously read the inside dust jacket if I didn't know this was about Viv. But this is kind of about Viv, 20 years-ish, maybe 15, maybe 10, something like that, in between the events of Legends and Lattes and this book. So this is her younger self. And I have to say, younger Viv is kind of grating. She is much more impatient and, knows better than, her elders and yada, yada, yada. So I do find her younger self a bit annoying, I won't lie. But this book, also tons of fun. Also, could be a 5-star read. Genuinely, this is how should I put it? It is very similar to Legends and Lattes, and yet not at the same time. And it really has nothing to do with the plotline or anything like that. In this book, Viv ends up being forced to convalesce in a seaside town that is rather sleepy, much to her endless frustration, and she ends up kind of making friends and partnering with a local bookseller. And in doing so, she starts becoming more ingratiated with the town. She starts making her own friends. She ends up kind of romantically involved with the bakery owner, which I have to say, as much as I do like Tandri, I prefer Maylee, which maybe sounds horrible, but especially because, in Legends Lattes, Tandri and Viv obviously end up an item permanently married, yada yada. But I just, I really like her dynamic with Maylee, and I think that that's kind of the whole theme of this book, though. Is if you read like the foreword or the dedication or whatever, it says because right things happen at the wrong time, and so the thing that's like bothering me about this book is the fact that she's going to have to like give up these relationships because she's so determined to leave Merk, the city slash town that she's like ended up in, to go back to, you know, being a sellsword, which obviously that's what she does because, you know, we know the events of Legends of Latte. She goes, you know, back. We meet her basically when she decides to retire from that life in that book. But I don't know, I'm just like, she's forming such wonderful bonds, and I'm just kind of bummed that, you know, this will inevitably come to an end. I feel like I'm watching a C drama where you know that your heart's gonna get broken, but you're just like so engrossed that you're watching it anyway. So, you know, I'm having a great time. I will say I don't love the found family as much in this one. Like I'm enjoying all the characters individually, but they don't have like the same pull as a team that like Viv's found family in Legends of Montes did. Like I said, I'm still loving the characters. I think that, you know, we're getting really good like personalities to like provide a foil to Viv's kind of like younger self. I just I'm just so bummed that we're gonna have to say bye to them at some point. So, you know, that's kind of where we're at. I will say that the resident like critter in this book is just as good as the resident. This is what I mean about the Invisalign. The resident critter in the like other book. In that book, there's like you know a large like night cat. I can't remember the exact like what she is, but she essentially is a giant cat that like provides protection to her chosen people. And in this one, we get Pot Roast, which is kind of a like cross between an owl and like a small dog that's very yappy, who belongs to the person that owns a bookshop that Viv has befriended. And he is just a hoot. He does not take to Viv immediately. She kind of takes it personally that, you know, he's not a fan, and she has like spent time trying to like win him over, and so far has not succeeded. So I'm like dying to see how that all happens. But like I said, I'm enjoying this. I will say that we are getting some stakes in here. I know that like this is marketed as a cozy fantasy and it's low stakes. Tell me why the villain in this book is a necromancer who makes whites and is like terrifying. So who knows? But we're kind of getting like hints that that's kind of what the um, Ravens, which is the like band of bounty hunters that Viv was running with when she got hurt. The Ravens were trying to like get a bounty on the necromancer, and I have a feeling that this is going to circle back to Viv. Like she's going to have to be someone dealing with the necromancer, even though she's laid up, just because of how things are going and like some of the Easter eggs are being dropped and like you know the town events and like that sort of thing. So I just have a feeling that you know she's gonna have to take the lessons that she learned about like you know teamwork and being patient and using your brain and all that good stuff. She's gonna have to like apply that to defeat our big bad. But you know I could be talking out of my behind, so who knows? Hello. Thank you. So I passed inspection. Can you be seated? Was landed. I am kind of heartbroken to say that I am done with bookshops and bone dust. I have to say, Mr. Travis, hit out of the park again. This is another 5-star read. I just think that this one kind of held like a bittersweet note that Legends and Lattes did not. And usually I'm like not here for that. I like my stories happy, or at least to have, you know, happy components. This felt like, you know, if you were when you were a kid, like you went to summer camp or you like went over to a friend's house or you went on vacation, and that feeling like when it was over, that's like this book, because obviously Viv is like making and building relationships in a town that she has no plans to actually stay in. And I have to say, honestly, the like friendship between her and Fern, who's the bookseller, is like what I'm gonna miss most. I am hopeful that at some point like they get back in contact again in the future, because the whole theme of this book, it seems, was like right people wrong time sort of situation, or right place wrong time or whatever. So it's kind of like I'm hoping that she and Fern cross paths again in the future. It kind of was just the story itself was like positive, and like the events were not like overly dark and anything like that. It's just I was so sad when it came at a point where things were coming to an end, and it just makes my heart sad. So again, like I said, 5-star read. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Just know that obviously, since Viv is younger, she's going to be immature in this one, which bothered the ever loving hell out of me. But I think that like her forced vacation, I think, really helped her grow and mature as a person. I also think it was really cool that Fern was like giving her books to kind of like make her realize things about herself. Like especially at the last book Fern gave her, kind of like pointed out to her that if and when it comes time to say goodbye, she actually needs to say goodbye, not just like skip town without saying anything, which is what she was originally planning on doing. So like I said, I just very much enjoyed this. I enjoyed the storyline. I enjoyed the plot. Felt like the plot was engaging and like was serious enough. Honestly, it felt higher stakes than Legends Lamantes for sure. But honestly, if this has been sitting on your TPR for a while, I highly recommend you pick it up. I think it's great. I think I had a great time, and I'm looking forward to his next release, which I do think is coming out either like sometime this fall, like this month, next month sort of situation. But I think that between this and Fear the Flames and like 25% of Wrath of the Dragons, I think I'm like officially back into reading. But I do think that I'm going to finish Rewind It Back in this video. So if you are unfamiliar, I had an ill-fated video where, and this is like the video where it kind of all fell apart. Not like the video itself, but like my life events. I was reading these books when life got a little crazy. I was doing a video where I read 5-star predictions and new releases. And so that was the video where I was planning on reading The Floating World, which I read and finished, The Night and the Moth, which I read and finished. But I did not finish Rewind It Back by Liz Humphreys. So I think that's going to be our third and final book for this video, and then we will kind of wrap things up. So I have officially finished Rewind It Back by Liz Tomfordy, and I have thoughts, so let's talk about them. First of all, I don't think I went over the premise of the book, so I'm going to do that real quick. This book follows Rio. He is a pro hockey player, and he is like one of like the found family members for like the Windy City series. He's kind of like the energetic golden retriever little brother. When we were like first introduced to him in previous books, he was always like trying to date and find his person, yada yada yada, but it never really worked out. Like he was always pestering like everybody else to set him up, and it never worked out. And come to find out, it never works out because he has a childhood love and ex-girlfriend who he still like holds a torch for, and so nobody really makes it past the first date because nobody compares to her, Miss Hallie Hart. So that is why he has been single. But in this book, he he is kind of at the point where he's considering whether or not he wants to re-sign with the Chicago team or if he wants to sign with his hometown team of Boston. And there are like several things that factor into that, including his mom still lives in Boston, and his parents kind of had like a really rough divorce, and so he feels like very protective and then like a very strong need to support her. But he decides that, on the off chance that he may be selling his house, he should renovate it because it's kind of still like a very standard new build white walls sort of situation. And his neighbor has her house renovated by an interior designer. If you can hear that, I'm so sorry, Itty Bitty is scratching away. But his neighbor hires an interior designer to redo their house because they are also selling soon and they want, it to have a little more character for a higher resale value. So he decides to do the same, not realizing that that interior designer is, in fact, his ex. And additionally, his ex and his neighbor became really good friends during the renovation process, and Kylie moves in with them, like with the neighbor, in order to have cheaper rent. So now his ex-girlfriend lives next to him, and he unknowingly hired her to renovate his house. And so that's kind of like the premise and the setup. And I have to say, I liked the two of them together. I really enjoyed it. I am not a huge fan of second chance romance because I feel like even when we get flashbacks, I don't feel the same sort of investment that I would if they were like meeting and getting to know each other for the first time. So that's just like a me thing. That's not like a this book thing. What I will say is that this book thing is I found that the reason that they broke up to begin with rather stupid. It was a serious issue that they broke up over, but like it wasn't their serious issue, and I felt like people got blame like unfairly shifted onto them, and nobody was like reasonable and like had open and listening ears about like what happened and why. And so I just kind of felt like the reason they broke up was a little bit idiotic, and it wasn't even them. It was because this happened obviously when they were kids. It kind of feels like that falls on the adults in their lives, and the adults really pushed it off onto them, and that resulted in their breakup. And so that is kind of between the second chance romance and that is kind of why I think this is going to be like a 3.5, 4-star read for me, just because I love, like I said, Liz Tomforty's writing. I enjoyed the relationship between the two of them. This book really had me like smiling and appreciative towards the end. There was like some healthy communication towards the end, but there were bits that were integral to the book that just didn't jive with me. So that is our third book finished. So I obviously listened to Fear the Flames. I got started on Wrath of the Dragons, but was thwarted by my Spotify listening hours. And then I read Legends and Lattes, which was a 5-star read, and Rewind It Back, which was a solidly, I think, I'm going to go with 4-star read, but it could be 3.5. Just come back to my reading wrap up for the month if you want to know what I land on for sure. But I think it is safe to say that I am back into reading. We have officially eased back into being a bibliophile. So if you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like to stick around, please subscribe. Either way, I appreciate you joining me today. Thank you. Bye.